peaceful and beautiful and physical and angry all at the same time.
Were you idiot, your mind would cave in and your heart would explode within your chest.
This is going to be a shame.
Here we go!
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome inside a brand new edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Matt Robinson along with you in a snowy and cold and slushy and just pretty gross Bytown, Canada. Less than beautiful at the moment. We're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Give us a follow there and subscribe to the pod wherever you're hearing us right now. Fun show today. We're going to talk to our buddy Andrew Stoeten. It's been a little while. I think we touched base during the playoffs. I can't remember for sure, but I assume we probably did. Talk a little baseball with him, and actually he's a bit of a soccer guy, so we'll probably finish up that conversation with maybe a little talk about the World Cup now that we know the groups here and what that's all going to look like, so we'll get to that in just a second. A personal favorite of a pint, one I've talked quite a bit about on the show before, from the Perth Brewery, that I will be passing in 10 days or so on my way down to cottage country for the holiday season. They make a couple of nice things. They often have this like stout. I forget what it's called. I'll have to look that up, see if it's on, because maybe worth a stop on our way through on our way through Perth, if that's the case. On this one, though, it is a black lager, the Bonfire Black Lager. Always very tasty. Like I said, on a dark, cold day, I think that fits just about perfectly, so that's what we're going to roll with. It's been a little quiet around here this week, but certainly, as always, Rob and I were here on Monday morning, and lots to get into on that show, including we had some fun kind of breaking down this list The Athletic just put out of the best, well, and worst, ranked 1 through 32 goaltending tandems in the National Hockey League. All of Eastern Canada's teams, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, at 26 or lower. So we discussed that a little bit. Has not been a strength of Eastern Canada so far this season. Lots more on that episode of the show as well. You can go back and check that out. And on Friday morning, you will hear from our buddy Steve Bunda back in studio. We'll get into some of the hockey news, the football news that's been going on this week, and get into that with him. But as I mentioned, today it's baseball, maybe a little soccer a little later on with our buddy Andrew Stoeten. Let's get to that right now. As promised, we get right into it here with our buddy Andrew Stoeten from TheBatFlip.ca and the Blue Jays Happy Hour podcast. Man, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me back, man.
Always appreciate it. I was trying to think while I was setting us up here when the last time you were on was. I know we were going to try and do one right after the World Series, but a lot of moving parts there, a lot of feelings as well, lots of things going on. But I think you were on during October during the run, were you not? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was. I was in mid-October for sure. But yeah, definitely right in the aftermath, it's like, oh man, I need to not think about this for an extended period.
Well, we will get into to some of what's gone on here over the last couple of weeks for the Blue Jays, what you think might still come. I also mentioned to you before we fired this up that wouldn't mind picking your brain a little bit on the World Cup draw that just went down and what that all might mean in a little bit. But first, I think the freshest thing we just saw, unless there's been anything new, is Pete Alonso is a Baltimore Oriole. They keep dropping free agents right into the AL East. I'm fine with it when it's north of the border. The rest of it I'm less fine with. But and that was for the longest time, really, until October. I was just about really cool with the Dodgers signing everyone in baseball. Like, geographically speaking, divisionally speaking, they couldn't be any further away from us. They're not going to hurt me down there. Fine, everybody to the Dodgers until it all hurt me a lot. But what do you make of the Alonso to the Orioles fit, and did it surprise you at all?
It did surprise me a little bit because obviously their big need is pitching, and they've been sort of the team that people have looked for, or less so last year because they were just so bad, but a team that people have looked at as having this great collection of young offensive talent, and the pitching has been sort of wanting for them. Great hitter. I don't hope he does well. I hope he struggles. I hope that he's already over the hill at this point. He's getting up there, but that helps them for sure. He's going to be an asset for them. It's a tough one for the Mets, I think. Yeah. Who also just lose Edwin Diaz as well, which is not that I really.
All of that freaks me out a little bit because it feels like the Mets are now going to be in on some of the guys we're hoping to be in on. I would have preferred that not be you just keep your guys and we'll deal with everything else. But I don't know if that's reasonable or not. But that's sort of where my mind went first.
Yeah, I definitely had a pang of that myself, but also I feel the Blue Jays are in such a good spot right now that that they don't have to worry about a team. Like, who wants to? You want to play for the Mets? Kyle Tucker? Come on, you're kidding me? Or Bo Bichette even?
Sure.
maybe. But and of course they could throw a lot of money at a lot of guys, at anybody that they want, really. But not coming off a great season, not a great start to the Steve Cohen era,
right?
So. Not super worried about the Mets per se, but maybe that will be unfounded optimism. I do feel the Jays are in a good spot, but yeah, I hate that Alonso is coming to the American League, to the AL East in particular. We'll see what the Red Sox do. The Yankees still haven't really done much. You keep hearing.
Well, I hear they're broke.
I mean, that's what you hear. I tend to feel that that's not going to be the case. But yeah, I would love to see the Jays get Tucker, and the Yankees have to go back to Bellinger, and the Red Sox, maybe they empty the farm for Ketel Marte. But those are still things that are, at the time I'm speaking, not done and not necessarily on the horizon. But yeah, it's going to be a really tough division, of course. But yeah, I still feel like the Blue Jays are in enough of the driver's seat in terms of the guys that they want that I'm not as bothered as I maybe could be by Alonso going to the Orioles, especially if they don't have anybody to pitch.
Well, this is it.
Sort of the thing for them.
Well, and they were one of those, and in very different places, I suppose, in terms of age of players or whatever, but not dissimilar to what happened to the Jays in 24. People kind of thought they'd be pretty good, and then they weren't. And that's, I think a lot of people thought the Orioles this year would be better than they were, and by the end of it, they were a non-factor. That mostly, I think, attests to a terrible start, and they were okay after that, but they seem to be, trying to get right back on track. The Bruins, the Red Sox were amongst the teams we heard interested in Alonso possibly as well. They're now still lurking with a positional need or looking for another bat, just trying to keep pace, I suppose, in the AL East. Out of the names that are out there right now, I shudder a little. Look, if we're going to lose Bo, that's going to suck. I don't want to see him in Boston. I don't want to see him in New York. The Mets, I guess I could live with. But yeah. What do you see as a fit now for the Red Sox, or where they might pivot to? And did you think Alonso would have made sense there?
I thought Alonso would be a good fit for them, and they seem to, Red Sox fans seem kind of upset that that's not happening, and that they're sort of stuck in neutral at the moment. Alex Bregman is, the guy who is their free agent, the big free agent that has that is in limbo for them. I think that's really a good fit for them. He's sort of a guy that I look to. I mean, not as good a fit for the Blue Jays. I think Bo would be a better option there. Just give me Bo and Tucker. I mean, this is, again,
let's just do both, man.
Again, a little optimistic probably, but yeah, I think Bregman's a great fit for Boston. I would love, much like Bellinger and the Yankees, I would like to just see those guys kind of reunite there, and then maybe not do a hell of a lot else.
The devil a little bit, right? Like, we've seen what that looks like. I can live with that kind of thing.
Absolutely. No, something flashy and new for those guys. Either of those teams would be not great. But I mean, the Blue Jays have already sort of set the tempo with getting Dylan Cease, and Cody Ponce has been an interesting addition, and Bieber coming back. They really seem like they're in a great spot, and haven't blown the budget on relievers yet. So you have to believe that there's a big bat still coming.
I think so. And we sort of talked a little bit before we hit record on this about how quickly the offseason began after the World Series. And it sort of felt like, and I can't remember if I'm exact, like whether it was actually the next morning or it was 2 mornings later, but it was almost right away. We're hearing teams or players are picking up their options and transactions are beginning, and it's like right into the offseason. And the Jays really haven't had many quiet weeks since then. They did pick up Shane Bieber right away. It's not too long after that we're into Dylan Cease, like right off the bat, early in the offseason, which I don't think anybody saw coming. You mentioned Cody Ponce. We know that the Jays are still in on a couple other things. But let's start with Bieber, because that's been a bit of a roller coaster. I think everyone was excited when he immediately grabbed that, picked up his option, and then there started to be this kind of irritating talk of, well, maybe he's not as healthy as we think he is, and then that sort of went away, and now it kind of feels like it's back. We had, I think it was Ross down at the winter meeting saying, yeah, he's week to week, and we think he'll be ready for the spring, which sort of came out of left field for me, man. Where are we at with your optimism level on Shane Bieber?
It's about where it was. I mean, I think, yeah, you're right that Ross said that at the meetings, and it did surprise me as well, even though, in retrospect, probably I insulated myself from that sort of thinking. And I think something that I've written about a couple of times and mentioned on our podcast is, you look at, there was a great piece, the Fangraphs annual top 50 free agents piece, and Ben Clemens from Fangraphs wrote that and spoke about, how his model had Bieber getting about the same amount as Brandon Woodruff, who took the qualifying offer from the Brewers, being in a similar boat as Jack Flaherty, who took the Tigers. He did the similar thing to as Bieber. He didn't opt out of his contract and took a $20 million 1 year deal, or last year of that previous contract, in the same sort of grouping as those guys, which is not what you sort of think of Shane Bieber as in terms of name recognition, or even in terms of what the Jays paid to get him.
Sure.
But on balance, looking at what his performance was like this year, I felt, after reading that, was kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe it was just the market wasn't going to be there for a guy like him with those questions when he's, when teams are objectively looking at him as, not Shane Bieber, the former Cy Young winner, but just a guy with the track record of health and of the performance that we saw this year. So obviously, I mean, he left money on the table, and it's not, I think he's coming back at, basically he's taking a $16 million year for this for 2026. But he had a $4 million buyout, so he's really only getting an extra $12 million. So yeah, that does sort of make it a different situation than a guy who took 20.
Sure.
But I don't know. At first I definitely kind of talked myself into believing like, oh no, it's probably just market forces. And now you do hear Ross talking about this, and I don't think it's like a really scary situation. I mean, they had him pitching in the World Series.
Right.
If it was any sort of serious situation, I think that they wouldn't have done that. They did bump him back a day at one point, which was noticeable. I guess they're calling it, fatigue in his arm, something that's not necessarily, unusual coming back from Tommy John surgery as he is, but he also did have a setback. So there are some questions about his health, I guess, that are fair to be asking. And then I guess, going along with that, fair to ask, whether that was a big part of him coming back. It's a thing that a lesson I should have learned here, I think personally, is sometimes when you're a reporter, not that I know that well, but I know, but like sometimes you will get information that you can't really report as fact, but you can sort of hedge in your report.
Right.
So Ken Rosenthal saying like maybe there is some sort of health concerns there.
I'm not saying, I'm suggesting or whatever, and I can still be out in front on this.
Yeah, and then it comes around and it makes you look pretty smart when it turns out that is exactly what it is. Not that necessarily Ken was doing that. Maybe more people should have seen the flipping with him in the rotation in the World Series to have been a red flag. But nevertheless, I think it's probably just pretty common stuff coming back after such a long layoff of pitching, and because he did have Tommy John surgery, but he just really hadn't pitched for like 2 years, really more than just the one.
Yeah.
So still a lot of faith in Shane Bieber, and I think that he can rise up to the level that's on the back of his jersey. But the performance just wasn't really the knock your socks off kind of guy that we expected.
What do you suppose, and maybe this would have been an easier question for you to answer before Ross spoke at the winter meetings, and we don't really know, assuming he comes back and he has a full spring and whatever else. He is a guy coming off Tommy John. He is a former Cy Young winner. For whatever it's worth to people who want to talk against him, it was in the shortened season. I think everything that year was weird, but everyone else had the same opportunities you did to go and win and compete and whatever else. So he is full value for it. But I'm curious, what do you suppose his upside could be if healthy next year? Because he's a guy that, based on my very limited knowledge of kinesiology, coming out of Tommy John, they always sort of say it's really not until your first full year back, after you've had a full off season, and this before you start to see what you're going to look like after that surgery. A lot of guys come out of the surgery with their velocity intact, maybe even ticking up a little, but not quite as good of a handle on it, and your control maybe isn't there. It's not till that first full season where you've had a winter to deal with it. After that, what do you suppose Shane Bieber is in this rotation as it appears to be constructed right now? Yeah,
I think he's still, Trey Savage, great World Series. Obviously, incredible story, special guy. But I think that, that it's a lot to put on him to look at him as, the number 3. And I think like that's a great role for a guy like Bieber, because
it's just assumed Trey's going to keep mowing down the AL after everyone gets a look at him. It's
as
a bit
much as that would be, it would be fun. And I
Sure.
think he's got great stuff, and there's lots of reasons to be optimistic about him.
Yeah.
But that's something a little bit temper our expectations, I think, for him. Even though I think, the Blue Jays themselves would say they're expecting him to be a big part of what they do going forward and in 2026. And it seems like the training wheels are off. There's not going to be a ton in terms of, limiting his innings. Yeah. But I think Bieber could be a really important part of the rotation. I don't know if I want to put a number on it, but like 3, if he's the 3, if he's the 4, you're doing, I think, a great job. I think you're in a great place. We'll see what Ponce is doing and how that sort of translates. But it's a really strong rotation, and like even though Bieber was diminished, I think you're absolutely right that you look at the command is something that it's going to take a little bit longer to get back, and that's something that was even though he wasn't like wild or anything when we saw him down the stretch in the playoffs, I don't think it was quite as fine as he would have liked it to be or as he was before, and I think that's something that probably more so than the velocity. Velocity usually comes back after these Tommy John surgeries, or when it does, there are the exceptions, Alec Manoah, unfortunately, but. But so you haven't pitched for so long. Of course, your ligaments and everything's going to be a little more ready to go, and just you've avoided all of that wear and tear.
Sure.
Whereas the command and getting just the feel back to your arm and having a new ligament in there, I think makes makes common sense to think that will take a little bit of, more time. We'll see. It could be that the Blue Jays are happy that it's only a 1-year deal and they didn't have to really make a call on. Extending him beyond that, it could. I'm not here to say that Shane Bieber is going to be fine and he's going to look like the guy that we all expected. But I think there's all sorts of opportunity and chance that is what happens. I think he's a savvy enough guy with good enough stuff, and once the command gets a little bit more to the place where he wants it to be, and like you say, have a full spring training, have a full off season, really ramp up properly, because it was a weird season for him.
Yeah.
So I think that all signs are pointing in a good direction, even with this little hiccup and the thought that maybe he's not going to be 100% ready by the time spring starts. That said, they're not always forthcoming about stuff. They don't have to be. So maybe there's more going on than we realize. But no, I think it's like just top to bottom, 1 through 7 at this point. Then we'll see about the number 7
Sure.
It feels like a really good group.
Yeah. Take me inside your sort of initial reaction to the news on Dylan Cease. I thought you had a great piece on TheBatFlip.ca that was sort of measuring expectation. This, to me, and you'll correct me if you think I'm off base, but there's a bit of a wide variance in what could happen here with Dylan Cease. I think there was every reason to be excited, and I remain excited to have this guy here. And there are the easy numbers for somebody like me who doesn't dive too deep into some of these analytics, but to go, yeah, okay, but you put him with Toronto's defense instead of San Diego's defense, and right there he's going to tick up a bit, and that ERA will come down a little based on nothing more than that. And I don't know if sometimes the idea of Pete Walker and his Magic staff are overblown, but let's see. Like I've seen comparisons to Dylan Cease coming into Robbie Ray coming in, and they're not exactly the same guy, not exactly the same situation, but maybe there are some things that the Jays can help him with that God knows the White Sox couldn't, and the Padres, for whatever reason, just didn't. But I thought your piece did a nice job of like, yeah, if this goes the way we think it could go, he could be up here at this. But here are the strikes against. Here's why there are some concerns about, not concerns, even that would be, but what's the difference between him being, a pretty good number 2 and a possible great number 1? I thought your piece there did a nice job of sort of framing what this guy is and why there's reason for optimism. But in that first moment where the reports are trickling out and we're hearing that one of the biggest free agents on the market, not for nothing, but a Scott Boras client, is off the market, signing with Toronto right away before the winter meetings and just getting it done. What was your takeaway there in those early moments?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Cease as a pitcher. Like as I wrote in that piece that you are referring to, I think it was Eno Saris or it might have been Ben Clemens, but somebody wrote that, for a guy who does what he does so well, which is be durable and get strikeouts, 2 of the very most important things that you can as a pitcher. The outcomes that he's got out of being that guy are pretty low for what you would expect, right? But also those are things that are, especially I think on the strikeout side, are predictive of better outcomes than we've got. People were talking about his ERA. I forget what it was. It was in the fours.
4.55, I believe.
There you go. And he's a much more talented guy than that.
Yeah.
Part of that, yes, is San Diego, but part of it, and he spoke about this when in his introductory press conference, which they did at the winter meetings down in Orlando this week. He spoke about the Jays knocking it out of the park in terms of coming to him and having ideas about how to make him better, and that seemed to be something that really motivates him, and that's good, because obviously you want a guy who just signed on for 7 years to still have motivation and
not just putting his feet up and hanging out for 7 years or 5 years.
I mean, he very clearly embraces the idea that yes, he has better stuff than what the outcomes have been, and that he wants to have those more aligned and be a real frontline guy. And I think that is a good sign, and I think that the fact that he really felt that the Blue Jays understood his stuff and his strengths and his weaknesses and where he can make gains in order to maintain the durability, maintain the strikeout levels, but just get to another level in terms of just straight up run prevention. And part of that is their defense for sure, because that's not going to go away, I don't think, in terms of the way that the Blue Jays value defense and all of the pieces that they have and the guys who are just really elite defenders behind him. That's certainly going to help. But yeah, I think it's a great sign that he's on board there. I think it was incredible that they did it so aggressively and so early. We spent a lot of the last couple of winter meetings, even though the Jays clearly had some money to throw around and they were chasing Soto, they were chasing Ohtani, they were still, they obviously had money for Vlad and they found guys, but it felt like, they were really chasing the game a lot and waiting for their big guy who was probably not going to sign with them, and watching plan B guys come off the board and ending up kind of backed into a corner a little bit. That's maybe why you end up with an Anthony Santander who can be better, but
yes.
Not a disastrous signing as yet, but certainly year one was not good. But I don't think a guy who is a great fit, but just a guy who added a power dimension that they really, really needed and did it from both sides of the plate. Kind of awkward now that George Springer is one of the best hitters in baseball again, because they're kind of both DHs, or at least, you'd kind of only want one of them running around in the outfield at the same time. Nevertheless, it just felt like they were chasing things, I think, in this year for them to go and be so aggressive and, have, as he said, there was no negatives about the culture of the team, about the city, about, the facilities, all of that stuff, it was all extremely positive for him. And they just went and met his price, and Boris, his agent, of course, would advised him to take it. And, you don't do that if you expect that if you slow play the market, you're going to get something better. So it speaks to how aggressive the Blue Jays were, how much they identified. And I think Ross said this, that, they thought that this was the best possible guy they could get on this market, and then they went out and did it. And as a fan, that's exactly what you want to hear, and I think that's what it makes me at least optimistic that even though they are still dancing with Bo and with Kyle Tucker, that they should be able to get those deals done. And it would, I think, at this point be a disappointment if they don't get those deals done, or at least one of those deals done, because it is such a great situation that they've put themselves in. And I think that speaks to it. The fact that they have a ton of money does as well. And I think, with him and
the money doesn't hurt. Yeah,
the money does not hurt. Yeah, absolutely. It really just adds a great layer to this rotation. And as much as everybody liked Chris Bassett and liked Max Scherzer, that was a slog at times. Scherzer in particular, didn't pitch well down the stretch. Yeah. Barely pitched in the first half. Had a great playoffs. Was a really fun story. But they've really, really improved on that slot. So,
well, I've said to you a couple of times, right, and I've said it in a few different places about Max Scherzer. Like I thought it was really fun to have him in a uniform last year, but it sort of felt by the end like you survived it as opposed to love it. And that's not to say I didn't love, but I'm sort of like, yeah, we did that. Like we don't have to do that again, right? And all those talk about how great the clubhouse was and the guys all love each other, and there's a big part of me that's like, yeah, but we don't have to run too much of this back, right? And so I'm sort of curious, one of the things you mentioned there, and maybe their actions make this question a little obvious to answer, but you sort of suggested that in the last couple of off seasons, they were sort of chasing it, and if you wait long enough on one guy, other options come off the table. This sort of felt like, and I've seen other people mention it as well, but like they went up to an agent who's notorious for telling his guys to wait, sometimes to their detriment. And, for fear of being a little crude, threw their dick on the table and said, how much, man? What's the number to just get this done now? And you still have the option at that point to go, yeah, fuck that, and walk away. But go, fine, there it is. If that's the number, here's the cash right now. Are we done? We good here? And now we can carry on with the rest of our offseason knowing exactly where our budget is at. I think there's value in that, man. And do you believe that that's the way this played out? They walked right up, demanded the number, and just said, like, if that's really the number, you'll take it now and we can be done with this?
I mean, there's probably some nuance to it, but basically, yeah, I feel that that's what it probably was, right? And, and it's a number that the models will have predicted, or it would have been a little bit beyond that. But, if they were just like, yeah, what'll it take to get it done? Yeah, and you're
Don't
right.
wait to talk to other people. Just take this right now. We'll pay a little more. Just take it now.
Absolutely. No, and cost certainty certainly has value,
yes.
To use the front office speak as well. And because, you can absolutely sort of map out what you're going to do from there in a much more clear way than if you're waiting and waiting and waiting until, almost Christmas, and then Ohtani goes elsewhere, and now you're having to pick up the pieces, or Soto goes elsewhere, and a bunch of guys you want are already off the board, or you are already deep into negotiations.
Sasaki goes elsewhere, but you've got Miles Straw now.
Well,
it turned out better than I thought it would, but yeah. No,
oh my God, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit quickly, and the way I normally do this show is, if you and I chat in the afternoon, I sort of wait and I post it the next morning. This feels like one of those ones that I probably have to get out as quick as possible because things happen in the shadows of the winter meetings. There is talk that the Bo and the Tucker conversations and negotiations could drag out a little while as they meet with other teams. So maybe I'm safe, but we'll see. If you could only get one of those guys right now, which way would you be looking at this? I think there's a comfort level, at least with the fans. We know Bo. We like Bo. He's our guy. But there is an uncomfortable conversation there that you probably need to have that says, hey, we're willing to give you your dollar, but you got to understand you're not our shortstop anymore. I think you would have to have that conversation, which might be uncomfortable. And maybe he gets value somewhere else as a shortstop and doesn't have to take that ego blow. If you can only get one back, Tucker is the other option. We don't know him as well. He's not as familiar, but he is a big name. Which one, if you had to pick only one, and we're not going to get both, which way would you lean?
Oh, to Tucker. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
pretty comfortably.
Okay.
As much as I like Bo, and he's a very good hitter. He's a very unique hitter. But Tucker hits from the left side. That's a great compliment to Vlad. He's a power guy. He's a guy who consistently puts up better offensive numbers than Bo. In terms of like the not Buck Martinez talking about how he just gets hits.
Best
Tucker is just a much more he's a much more productive player. The outfield fit is a little bit awkward because he's not an elite defender, and like I said, we got Santander due to plod around there for a while, or at least. It sucks so much if Santander was the reason they that Springer just his contract ended and he went elsewhere because they didn't really have a great fit for him. Because Springer just feels like such a dude for them.
Yep.
But that is a tangent we could talk about.
A reformed dude. Like I sort of had my eye on him back in the day as part of the Red Ass Club with Chapman and whatever else. It sort of feels like he's sort of a bit of a chameleon, right? Okay, I see we're moving in this direction. I can be that guy too, and good for him for
and a leader in a different kind of way. I mean, speaking again about the Cease introductory press conference, like he spoke about how Springer had reached out and was basically the guy who had done that for him among his new teammates, which is cool. Love Springer,
sure.
But yeah, I think Tucker's just a better player, and I think is just a little bit less scary in terms of. Bo's had the knee troubles, and I mean Tucker has been had health problems as well. But I don't know. There's just something about Bo that worries me. The lack of speed worries me. The lack of power a little bit worries me. Like that's kind of gone down in his career, and I don't want to knock Bo. And I would love to see him come back. I would love to think that if the Blue Jays do get Tucker, that maybe that it gives Bo some sort of impetus to rethink what he might take from them. Do
you think there's an ego play here? Like, man, Vlad just got $500 million. It was always me and him. Now am I going to take that much less? Like, and he would have to take that much less. Like you said, there is an injury history. There is some positional question right now. His speed has diminished. But man, it's got to be a blow to stay in house and sort of eat that.
Yeah, probably, but also, I mean, he'll be making plenty of money. I think he'll be all right. He can buy his ego off with whatever little trinkets he needs. I mean, I can't claim to think for him. I don't know. That does motivate some guys. I would hope that, being a part of a bigger thing, look at the way that the Dodgers have put their egos aside and have so many guys of that caliber. Like that's, I would hope that makes you even want to come to the team more and return more, even if it's not necessarily.
Yeah, I see Tucker signs there. Man, we could be a part of something here, right?
Yeah,
like
I mean, that if they can get those guys to, take a little bit less so that they can bring them both in. I think that's, and I think the opportunity is there. I mean, that's probably crazy thinking, but it's crazy thinking that's sort of been, we've been working towards this point, and we just saw the Blue Jays give $210 million to Dylan Cease, to a starting pitcher for 7 years, and to
previously
$500 million to Vladdy. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's something where it would seem more strange to think that pie in the sky if we hadn't had the what we think is a really realistic chase at Soto and at Sasaki and at Ohtani, and to see them pay Cease, pay Vlad. I don't know. They really are acting like a big market club, and that is sort of a thing that they could do. Doesn't necessarily have to work out that way. I think it would be bad for everyone to sort of expect that, and if it's not that, be
suddenly heartbroken. Yeah.
No.
At this point, though, it's Christmas time, Stoeten. We get to dream for the full tree, the big gift under the tree.
I think so. But even just one of them. I mean, look at what they did last year in the playoffs without Bo for the vast majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there's a dagger to me every time, when hearing Ross talk about, they feel really good about where their offense is already. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And you'll get more from Santander for sure. You haven't really had big losses on that side.
I asked Arden Zwelling on the show this last week, Stoeten. I said, you're one of those guys who talks, and certainly Ross always does. How many off seasons we hear him talk about, we think there's improvement on the roster already, and how infuriating that is to fans. Like, no, go sign more, go do more. And how many off seasons we've had where it felt like they came out a bat short. And this year I asked Arden, do you almost have no choice but to bank on a little internal regression, right? Like, not a ton, not fall off a cliff. I don't think Nathan Lucas is going back to AAA or anything like that, but there was a lot of guys who suddenly clicked all at once, and then Springer sort of pulled what we thought was his decline. He pulled the nose up on it. I don't know that you have much of a choice but to expect a couple of those guys to step back just a little bit, that you would be foolish not to try and address that by bringing in some help.
I think so, and I think that this is a way where the front office, as frustrating as their mindset can be, will probably be beneficial, because I think a lot of fans, have a lot of recency bias, because there were guys on fire in the playoffs.
Yeah, Ernie Clement becoming an all-time playoff.
We love Ernie Clement, but he was like 25% worse. He had like a 75 WRC plus against right-handed pitching last year. Like, you don't want to give that guy all those at bats against right-handed pitching, like as him being an everyday player. Mm-hmm. You don't. I mean, there are Addison Barger. If you combine what he did in the playoffs in the regular season, it makes his season look quite a bit better because his playoffs were so good. Yeah. But coming out of the regular season, he was not necessarily going to be the guy, or it was. His position was a little bit more in limbo, I think.
Yep.
Lucas and David Schneider both had great years in the regular season, but I think Lucas in particular in the playoffs, I don't know if his numbers necessarily reflect it, but I thought he, a lot of good at bats. He really took over that position. We didn't see a ton of Schneider there, and I think the team will do a better job than I think a lot of fans would of taking the totality of the information that we gained from 2025 and put it into the making the roster better. Though I'm sure they do feel that there are internal improvements to be gained. Santander first on the list.
Yes,
but yeah, Springer being that good again is really, really tough to bank on. So yeah, I mean, I think they hopefully they see that, because they should go out and get a big bat and take an opportunity that they have in front of them here to become an even bigger powerhouse among the league, right? And I think that's really what is here. The like the Dodgers, having huge elite talents on those big contracts, it just begets getting more of those guys. More guys want to come and play here, the better your roster is, and that's sort of just That's the ideal way to build a team, and it's an opportunity that the Blue Jays have. It's a position the Jays have put themselves in, that they have in front of them right now, if they're willing to go there to spend that money and do it. And the Cease signing and the Vlad signing last spring, of course, makes you really feel like they understand that. Which fingers crossed, because that would be a real fun.
Well, and people forget or weren't born soon enough to remember that between 92 and 93, they turned over a huge chunk of that roster. And you want that extra hunger brought in. You want to address what you thought were things that were unsustainable. And so this offseason will feature a little bit of that, I'm sure. Tell me a little bit about Cody Ponce, because my knowledge of that guy before they signed him was he was just a guy, and then he went off to play in Asia and ended up MVP, the Korean League this year. They bring him back at a pretty manageable number, 3 years at $10 million per. I think that allows you to have some flexibility, whether he becomes sort of your 4-5 starter. I doubt they're thinking of him in the bullpen. I guess they could be. But tell me a bit about this guy and what you think their expectations of him would be.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing he would sign here if it wasn't an opportunity to pitch in the rotation. But yeah, he was outstanding this year. Really has been over in the Pacific Rim for 3 seasons, a couple in Japan, 1 in Korea, maybe 4 actually. It doesn't matter because his time in Japan, though it wasn't as bad as I think some of the overall numbers look. Like he had a year where the BABIP was crazy and his strand rate was really weird, but the underlying numbers were a little bit better. This year he added a new pitch. He added a kick change. Which kind of looks like a splitter, which is you'll hear people call it his changeup. You'll hear it called the kick change. You'll hear it called a splitter. But it does make him look very Kevin Gausman-like. He does have some rise on the fastball and then the darting breaking ball, and that's sort of been his bread and butter. And that's something that obviously the Blue Jays saw. They love Trey Savage, who was a guy who's like that. A lot of these guys are really focusing and honing in on that and the way that they tunnel their pitches and all that sort of pitching lab stuff. And Ponce sort of fits right into that mold. There's going to be some regression. Obviously, I think he had like a 1.73 ERA or something like that. Didn't allowed less than a runner per inning. His WHIP, which also I pointed out in my piece about it. I think like Mitch White was 15th or 10th in the KBO in WHIP.
Our buddy.
Zach Logue was 5th. So we do have to kind of keep
adjust
in mind
for competition and
but I think that's it's the same process as as scouting a high school player or scouting college guys who are going up against inferior competition a lot. You can't just look at the bottom line stats. You have to see how the pitches move and use all the data that you possibly can. And on those fronts, even though the ball is different, so it's going to move a little bit differently. And I think that the idea is that the shapes will contract a bit, that he won't be able to generate quite as much movement when he comes over and uses the MLB ball, though there's some optimism there because he's used it before, because of course he pitched in MLB with the Pirates a couple years ago before he went out east. He's got some really, really good stuff, and it looks like the kind of weapons that should be able to get big league hitters out. To the degree to which he'll be able to do that is really the big question. But obviously, the Blue Jays believe a lot in what he can do, and I think, like I say, I think you probably don't get a guy like that if you're not saying you're in our rotation.
You're not telling him about how nice Buffalo is, or
no, absolutely not, no. So. Or even just being a swingman. I don't think he's going to lose his job to Eric Lauer, right? I think that this guy is locked in for a bit. And it's going to be fascinating. There might be a bit of a learning curve. It'll be an interesting story all spring. I think the early part of the year. But I think that just with the stuff that he brings, just the fall off the table kick change and the and the fastball that has some good rides should be. Is the kind of stuff that moves in similar ways at similar velocities to pitches that big leaguers use to great effect to get guys out. And so the expectation is he's going to be able to do the same. Maybe not at an elite level, but for $10 million a year, you don't have to be that. He can just be, one of the guys. He could just be an improvement on Jose Barrios, which at this stage, most fans probably think that's not going to be too hard.
That was the last thing I wanted to ask you about on the Jays, was where we're at with Jose Barrios. And there had been a bit of a cloud, and maybe I was being overly skeptical, but at the very end of the season, when he sort of disappeared, They were saying it was due to injury. I sort of wondered, and I may have spouted off on Twitter as one does from time to time, that it felt like maybe they were giving him a little cover for the fact that you're not going to be on our DS roster. Now, I don't know that. For all I know, he was legitimately hurt, but now we have heard some things, including from the team themselves down at the winter meetings, that by the time it was the World Series and he wasn't going to be on the roster, it doesn't sound like it was still injury related. He chose to be away. Now Ross said all the things you're supposed to say. We expect him to contribute for us and what. Are we at a point, do you think, where this is irreparable? Will he come into spring training with any sort of reasonable chance of getting back into the rotation and pushing someone out of the way? Or do you think we may be looking at a point, like, I can't imagine anyone is taking the full freight. I heard you and Nick talk on Blue Jays Happy Hour, but maybe one of these desperate teams who wants to show they're at least trying ahead of a potential work stoppage. But do you think there's any chance this is salvageable and he'll be pitching, like making starts for the Blue Jays next year, or is that ship sailed?
Yeah, I mean, some people will be very adamant that ship must have sailed and he must be gone, and how dare he do that? I don't know. I think that's it's not a good situation, but there's certainly a possibility that he comes back. I don't think that it's crazy to think that he'll just come to spring, say the right things, and put his head down, and then we'll see what happens from there. Maybe a team loses a starter late in spring, and there's an opportunity to move him there. I mean, I think that especially if he comes back and shows that he's healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know about trading him right now. I think that.
What did you make of how the fall played out? Did they give him cover, or was he legit hurt and then just didn't come back? What did you make of all of that?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. I mean, if you look at where his fastball velocity was, it was really pretty high coming out of spring, and in the I think just basically his first start, and it pretty much nosedived.
Yeah.
Took a nosedive, right from the get go, and it's just he's a guy who obviously prides himself on making every start and taking care of his body and being ready to go and answer the bell, and I just think he didn't have it. So like physically probably wasn't there all year, and they just used that as the opportunity to sort of elegantly push him aside, which obviously, that was a tough conversation, I'm sure, to have had. And so, I think that there probably was an injury there of some kind, but had it been up to him, he would have kept on pitching.
Yes.
It is a very interesting situation. I won't be surprised if the Blue Jays don't trade him. I won't be surprised if they do. Like you say, it will be very hard. Full freight, I don't think is, that's completely out the window.
Yeah.
I cited in a piece about this. Richard Griffin points out that, Ponce's making 3 years, $30 million over 3 years. Barrios is owed 66 over 3 years. If the Jays kick in the difference and send Barrios elsewhere, they still have that same commitment on their books, and just have another team taking on the rest of the Barrios contract elsewhere. I'm of two minds about this, and you say you heard Nick and I talking about it. Nick has sort of convinced me that he
was fairly persuasive.
Value well, his stability in the rotation, the innings that he can still soak up. Like, I don't think he's broken. I think he clearly showed that he could, whatever he was dealing with, he could pitch through it, just not as well as anybody would expect. And you maybe think that I wouldn't be surprised if he pitched better next year than he did in 2025. It's just, it's just an awkward situation, and ideally, there's a team out there who has trouble getting, quality free agent starters to come to them, and feels that, having a guy soak up a ton of innings, the Padres, I think somebody, I retweeted something the other day where they were like, well, what is this rotation at? Especially, you lose Cease, you're going to lose Michael King. Maybe they could use a guy like this. There are other ways to think about it where I think it's very easy for us here, and it's been easy for me basically this whole time to be like, nobody's going to want this guy. That's crazy, but there is some value there.
Including the Jays. Like, you look at their actions, they're saying, come and pitch for a spot. We expect you to. Meanwhile, here's Cody Ponce, and here's Dylan Cease. Trey Savage is now a mainstay. Like, they're filling in his spot threefold here over the last several weeks. So it's hard to imagine they see him as a big part of their team next year. But
this is true, but also, someone gets hurt. Shane Bieber has some problems, and then it's a completely different story. So I can understand them being careful to say the right things and to to put a positive spin on it. But yeah, you can never have too much pitching.
And he's
but
a well-liked guy, right? They don't want to bury him either, right? So
yeah, I don't know if you want a guy who's unhappy and
not in our magical clubhouse where everybody's supposed to be getting along. But, last thing here. Yeah. Sorry, before I let you go here, Stoeten, I did want to ask you about what you made of the World Cup draw last week. Not the show itself, because it was just insufferable. I'm not really a soccer guy, and I watched almost every minute of the goddamn thing for some reason. But the draw itself, I'm a soccer guy in the way that I am a basketball guy, or if there's a big game, a championship game, I'm watching. If Canada is playing on the men's or women's side, I'm watching. But I am anything but an expert on this. And so I was doing some reading. I knew I was going to have some guests on the show who I would want to ask about it. And so you at least sort of want to vaguely know what you're talking about. And I was sort of watching some of the predictions or at least what would be the good outcomes for Canada through each pot. And I saw Switzerland mentioned in pot 2 a couple times as like, okay, avoid Colombia, avoid Morocco. Like, Switzerland isn't who you wanted, but it's not the end of the world. It could have been far worse. Qatar was a team you wanted. They're 51st ranked in the world. That's a nice draw for Canada. And then it sort of seemed to be like, avoid the Italy playoff in pot 4. And of course, you got the Italy playoff in pot 4. I have to assume as like Switzerland, I think I read, is one of only 2 European teams to have gotten out of the or to made it to the elimination round in the last 6 major competitions. So they are anything but a pushover. And one of the things maybe Canadian fans aren't excited to hear about is they were probably just as thrilled to get in Canada's group as Canada was to get Switzerland. But tell me about when you saw who was in Canada's group. Did you think it was, good, bad, the end of the world, no chance they might get out of this? Like, what did you see? No,
I think they might get out of it. Yeah, Switzerland is they're not like a sleeping giant, but they field strong teams, like you say. They keep going to major tournaments. Italy, will they make it through? Like, they've had such weird disappointments.
Well, tell me about them for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, man, but like that is still a 4-team playoff to see who's going to come out of there. But Italy has this history that I think is what's terrifying people of have been a soccer power in the past. It feels like. Again, from this novice point of view, that's not where they're at right now, or they wouldn't be in this playoff. And yet, it does feel like if they were to get in and get through this playoff, they could still do some damage. Is that right? Or
I think so. Yeah, I mean, any of like the traditional powers, the teams with the biggest leagues in the world. I mean, those are obviously still going to be tough matches. Even for Canada, even a Canada team that is in a much better place than. Anybody who's watched the team for as long as I can remember. Sure. Alex Bunbury ain't running around out there. But yeah, no, I mean, they are. It feels like it wasn't even that long. Was it Euro 2020 that they won? Like they
sure, yeah, okay.
But that's we're getting far away from that. That's 6 years. That can be a really long time.
And good in Europe is different than can they beat Canada, right? Like, and I know, like you said, Canada is better now than they used to be, but. Man, Europe's a scary place for soccer countries, right?
It is. I mean, any of the European teams are going to be tough. I followed the Dutch team, and they're getting a European playoff winner in their group, and it's like, no, this is like that's not what you want. You want sort of you would have preferred the Curaçaos. You would have preferred the
Caraco, I believe it's pronounced.
Yeah, Morocco's got some guys, but yeah, no, you definitely would prefer to not have. Italy and Switzerland in that group. That would make it very, very difficult for Canada. Yeah. And yet, I don't think that it's a completely impossible task, A, to beat Switzerland, or B, to have Italy, somehow not manage to get through.
And I think, did we not see 8 of the third place teams this year because they've expanded, I think also get through. So maybe if you pound Qatar hard enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody else might do that too. But
yeah. Right.
But the thing is, like, the margins for error are so slim. Like the lesser countries in Europe have raised the floor so high that it's not a guarantee that Italy gets through this playoff. There are lots of good teams full of good players who will have trouble getting past the
Northern
the
Ireland
lesser lights over there. It is, it's going to be difficult. I don't even know. I should have in front of me who Italy has to play to get there.
Well, like I said, I think Northern Ireland is one of them. North Macedonia, I think.
I mean, they're pretty small, but
yeah.
But so I mean that would at least be fun.
Looking at Canada, Italy in downtown Toronto is going to be a shit show, right? If it gets to that point.
I think so. I mean,
in a fun way, but
a lot of Little Italy's been gentrified out, I'm sure. But yeah, I think this 2008. I was living not too far from College Street when they won the World Cup, and was it 2008? Whatever year it was, 2006 probably. Nevertheless. Yeah, really fun stuff. World Cup always a blast, and it's so great that Canada is, now a team that is actually capable of making some noise. But it is a tough draw for them, absolutely. Home field advantage will give them a chance, I think. Everybody's going to be real loud and behind them. But we've seen USA, Mexico, really good sides. Like maybe USA not having its best time at the moment, but Canada has played some really tough opponents really well.
Well, we should also note, though, that Switzerland was just over here this year and beat up on the U.S. and on Mexico. So where there's good news, there's bad news, right? We've got those guys to worry about as well. But I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm not a traditional soccer guy, but having it, in North America, friendly time zones, God knows I can't afford to go down and watch this shit. But
who could? Yeah.
No, but to see it, it's kind of cool when you see your backdrop, right, that it'll be in Toronto to watch a couple of these games. It's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being nowhere near the city when it's going on.
This is it. So, Stoeten, I always appreciate it, man. And in all likelihood, this will be the last time we chat on the show in 2025. Can't tell you, as always, man, how much I appreciate you making time throughout the year. I know I come knocking pretty often, but I always enjoy your work at TheBatFlip.ca and on the Blue Jays Happy Hour podcast, and really appreciate you making the time to come on this stupid show, and best of the season to you if we're not talking to you again.
Yeah, to you as well, man. Thanks so much, and yeah, keep knocking. We should talk before spring training at least, right?
100%, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Maybe when we get the results of these two playoffs.
That too, yeah.
There you go. So, all right, for Andrew Stoeten, my name is Matt Robinson. We'll wrap it up here. You can find his work at TheBatFlip.ca and the Blue Jays Happy Hour podcast. We'll link to both in the show notes at tallcanaudio.com or wherever you're hearing us right now. Stay tuned for our next episode. Steve Bunda from 580 CFRA will be here. We'll talk some football, some hockey, some UFC, whatever's in the news with that guy, and always some craft beer. We'll see you next time.
I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.